Artie Lange Show. Excited about my next guest. This gentleman was Johnny Carson's lawyer, agent, everything for a while, and wrote a book about him that has really got some fascinating stuff in it called Simply Johnny Carson. Here's Henry Bushkin. Henry, welcome to the show.
Artie, thank you. John, nice meeting you. Lovely to be here.
Now, when did you meet Johnny Carson?
1970.
Okay, so right towards the end of his run here in New York City with The Tonight Show. The first 10 years from 62 to 72, he did here.
He left in 72.
Right, so at the end of that run, you meet him here in New York, and did he leave other representation he wasn't happy with and went with you?
He had William Morris at one point. He
Seems
had
like everybody
he had agents
did.
like everybody.
Everybody had William Morris at some point back then,
Right,
it seemed, right?
Right.
And you're a young attorney. Why did he choose you?
I think because he had no one else to trust, no one else to turn to at that moment.
Why? Was he in crisis of
What
some
led
sort?
him in
He
your
was in
direction?
crisis. He was
He's
in
at
crisis.
the end of his second marriage, right? Just ended.
It was bad before it ended.
Right.
Both drinking.
This is Joanna.
Joanne. That ended in 1970 at that raid. I talked about an incident, how I met him.
Right.
Right. This was like the day after your interview.
The second day, that's right.
You went
right.
to her
So how did you meet?
secret apartment.
I was introduced by a mutual friend who said, I want you to meet Johnny Carson. I said, I don't want to go to the show. I'm busy. He said, no, I actually want you to meet him. I said, why would he want to meet me? And it turns out that he really didn't have anybody to turn to at that moment. He had problems with his wife, problems with his manager, really didn't have a lawyer, so I sort of filled the bill at that moment.
But the show was a good thing in his life because it was a big hit.
It was a big hit, but you know, taxes in those days, he was making $100,000 a week.
Wow.
And taking home $3,000 a week.
Are you kidding me?
So $97,000 a week was deferred, if you could believe this.
Oh my God.
So here was a guy making $5 million a year, taking home $150,000.
So now, what do you say
makes
to him?
no sense.
What do you say to him? You lay out a
this
plan
is
where I
bad.
can help.
That's what you say. This is not good.
You lay out a plan where, look, I can help you. Come with me. And
No. It wasn't that. It wasn't that at all. I was hired just to go along with this escapade, breaking into this apartment. That was it.
Wow. Initially.
That was it. That was my role, to go along.
Why?
Because
Why would he need you? He wanted a lawyer there.
in case the cops came.
Right. He had a lawyer.
He had a lawyer. He had me.
So now, did you go?
That was my role. That was it. That was it that night.
So now let me explain what it is. Explain exactly what we're talking about. He hired you to do exactly what?
He was married to Joanne.
Right.
He suspected she might have an apartment somewhere in the neighborhood of their apartment.
Okay.
He
Which
hired,
was where? Upper East, Upper West Side?
on the east side of Manhattan, in the 40s, okay, East 40s. He lived at UN Plaza.
Okay.
A fabulous apartment, duplex, 5,000 square feet.
Wow.
Fabulous.
Oh my God.
Right. So obviously they weren't looking for more room, that she needed another apartment. I mean, that was.
But he knew about this house.
He hired a detective. He hired a detective.
Okay.
And the detective and Johnny and two other friends escorted him, together with me, to go to the apartment. And in the event the lock had to be picked, and unless the manager wouldn't let us in, unless whatever happened, we were prepared. The lock was going to be picked. The lock was going to be broken.
How many people were in your party?
5.
You, Carson, and what, a couple of strong-arm guys? Or
A private detective.
Right, okay.
A technical guy around to take photographs of whatever we saw.
Wow, so he was obsessed. He wanted something.
Yeah. But look, in New York in those days, you needed adultery as a ground for divorce then. It had to be.
Interesting, okay.
So obviously this was grounds for divorce. After that event, we did file for divorce. He hired me to handle the divorce, as young as I was, and then that lasted 18 years.
Well, he believed, okay, that the impetus for all this was he believed she was using this apartment specifically to sleep with Frank Gifford.
No. He just believed she had an apartment. He didn't know who was occupying it with her, but he just believed she had one.
Now, how did Frank Gifford's name come about?
Because we went in and saw his photographs, his clothes, her clothes.
Okay.
I think it was kind of obvious.
So you didn't encounter...
Not hard to determine,
And he
actually.
broke down the second night you'd met him.
Absolutely.
Here's Johnny Carson crying.
Yeah, as anyone would. I mean, come on, you know,
Right.
if you're with some buddies and you break into an apartment, it happens to be your wife, and she's sleeping with your best friend, you're not, they weren't friends, by the way, but you're going to be miserable. You're going to be heartbroken. That's what happened
But
to
if
him.
he really wanted a divorce in some way, was he happy? But he was still heartbroken. But
At the moment. He was heartbroken for the moment.
Right.
It lasted a day and a half. He was okay after that.
So you guys, from that visit, you got what you needed. You got enough evidence for adultery and got a divorce?
Sure.
Okay,
sure.
great.
It took 2 years to get it. I mean, there was lots of
When she denied, she said it was like a secretary's place that
She
would-
still denies it. She lives here in the city, and I read in the paper she denies the whole thing. But
Right.
What is she going to do?
Interestingly enough, I had dinner with Joe Mullen a couple of nights ago, who was with me.
Right.
And I spoke today with a fellow by the name of Mario Irizarry, who was with us.
Right.
And, you know, look, it wasn't written to create controversy. You know,
Right.
This happened 43 years ago. You know, I mean, it wasn't yesterday.
Sure.
I mean, who cares, you know,
Right.
if Frank Gifford slept with anyone 43 years ago?
Maybe Kathy.
You know,
Lee
I mean,
does,
come
right?
on. And Joanne Carson could say whatever she likes. You
Yeah,
know,
sure.
I'm
She's not suing
debating
you.
it
She's
with
not
her.
suing you. I mean, that says a lot.
Not yet, right?
No, I don't think she would. I mean, I don't think. I mean, I believe.
Suing me for what?
Quite frankly, I believe.
I mean,
you.
what damage has anything? I mean, if anything, this is good.
Yeah.
It's gotten her in front of certainly it's gotten Johnny in front of the public, right? He's entitled to a renaissance. This is part of it. You guys who really didn't watch the guy, who really didn't.
Oh, I
know,
did.
No.
I
okay,
love
okay.
watching him.
But John, you didn't. You
I
didn't watch
did.
it.
I mean,
Maybe,
as a little
maybe.
kid, I mean, I remember.
I got you by 8 years. It's a
but-
big 8 years. I remember the show.
But we're talking about him. We're talking about the
Sure.
genius that he was. This book was never intended to be a knock on him. It was intended to be what our life was like. I'm not saying it was good. I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying this is what it was.
It just seems.
I'm not making any judgments here.
Right.
I'm just saying, I did it. I'm not proud of it, but I do it all over again.
There
That's
are
just the way it was.
There are a lot of people like my mother loves Johnny Carson.
Sure.
Like you can't say anything bad. Like she loved him. She misses him to death. This book would disappoint her. It would, you know.
Well, you know.
But it's the truth. I mean, it's what it was.
Look, sometimes books are like Rorschach tests. You bring your own prejudices to them. If you love the guy and you can't stand to see anything that's might be construed as negative, well, you're not going to like it. It's that simple.
Well, my fans found out that I had taken a drink every once in a while. Very disappointed.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the drinking. It seems like
Sure.
Would you consider him a full-blown alcoholic?
No,
Johnny Carson?
not at all. When he
Seemed to
lived
be an issue in his
when he
life.
lived in New York,
Right.
Okay, when he was out with Ed McMahon every night.
Yeah.
Okay, in the '60s.
Who might have been a full
early '70s.
Yeah.
Every night they were out drinking.
Right.
And that was the problem with that marriage with Joanne. They were both drinking. I mean,
Right.
it was a problem marriage. I mean, you know, look, he wasn't any different than a lot of guys you know. You know, superstars have personality quirks.
Of
I mean,
course.
I
yeah,
mean,
sure.
come on.
Artists do. I mean,
You
creative
know,
people.
if Brad Pitt doesn't get the right table at a restaurant, is he not going to be a little bit pissed? I mean, come on.
No, you're right. Yeah, you're 100% right. And I think Carson was as big as they come. You know?
He was the best. You know, in late night television,
He really was
you
amazing.
guys have to say he was the best. His star shone brighter than any of these guys today. That's not to say they're not good. They're all good, but he was the best.
His interviewing skills are just, and the way he could be funny within a great interview, and he commanded respect too. He didn't have to put himself down. A lot of guys who are guys I love, I think they're brilliantly funny, feel they have to be self-deprecating. Carson didn't have to do that. He was smooth, you know. He didn't have to be self-deprecating and he'd still be funny and charming.
And if he was self-deprecating, you knew it was a great line.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
because the guy had everything you could possibly want. You know,
Now,
I mean,
after this incident, do you go to California?
which incident?
I mean, where you go to the apartment.
Right, okay.
That's how you meet him.
Right.
And you successfully get this divorce, blah, blah, blah. Do you go to California with him? Or do you
I go
move-
3 years later. He goes 2 years later, and I follow a year after him.
Because you have a business now with him, and you're going to be
No,
out there.
because I'm his lawyer.
Right,
And
and you
he
needed to
wants
be
me
there.
to come out and join him in California.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, you're in business with the guy. I mean, you're his lawyer.
In business, okay,
Right.
that's fair enough. I'm his lawyer.
And you move out there, and basically for the rest of his career, you're his rep?
Until 1988.
What happened then?
Our goals really diverged. We obtained ownership of The Tonight Show.
Right.
You know, NBC owned it. We took it away from
Pretty
them.
good move.
Pretty good move. Then we got 5 on-the-air series commitments from NBC.
Right.
We had 2 guaranteed films from Columbia for the distribution of the television. So automatically, we were a big company.
And people forget that company was huge.
Right.
I mean,
Almost immediately, Coca-Cola came to us and said, look, Johnny and the president of Coca-Cola at the time were good pals, a guy by the name Don Keogh.
Right.
They started in television together in Omaha in 1949. He happened to become the president of Coca-Cola. Johnny said, call this guy. I called him. I go to Atlanta. They ultimately offered $100 million for our business that we had just created.
wow.
And they take it over. Johnny works for 5 years.
Wow.
Okay, gets $25 million a year, okay, and $100 million in their stock, and they own it lock, stock, and barrel.
And Coca-Cola stock. He gets
Coca-Cola stock.
Oh,
that would
my.
be worth roughly $2.2 billion today.
Oh my God! I can't even fathom.
And the deal was turned down because he refused to guarantee that he'd work for 5 more years.
Wow.
Right in 1980. So he worked for 12. And he wouldn't guarantee them 5.
Could you imagine? The money left on the table.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But he died worth about $500 million. So
Sure.
you can't say that he that he went wrong anywhere.
Well, that's the other cool thing about Johnny Carson was he was open about the fact that he was not a workaholic exactly. He liked taking off, and he was so confident that no one was taking that job from him. He was like, every young guy, every young comic, every comic my age, do whatever you want. Guest host as much as you want. No one's taking this job from me. And I'm taking off a lot. He took a lot of vacation.
Sure. Well, he worked 37 off 15.
Yeah, I mean, that's not bad.
Not bad.
And, you know, it was
And
a smart...
paid 52.
It was a smart move on his part because you never had to run reruns, which sort of could lack in the sometimes you did, but...
Well, we did
you-
show reruns.
The best of Carson, you know.
Yeah.
And, but you could also... keep fresh shows on, which the public like. Keep them watching. You own the Tonight Show. Keep them
Sure.
watching it with younger guys guest hosting, and you're not worried about them taking the job.
So
It's great.
you know when Joan Rivers had her run-in with Carson way back when, she was the permanent guest host,
Right.
and she did a brilliant job. And then she took a competing job at Fox, and they never spoke again. But she was terrific. Before that, Garry Shandling
Right.
was the guest host, and he was the guy we liked best to really succeed Johnny if Johnny would have ever given a date that he was going to leave, because Garry Shandling wasn't prepared to wait around forever, as you can imagine.
Went on and did his own things,
Right.
parodying the
Right.
world of
The Larry Sanders Show, one of the
Right.
great
I love
comedic
it.
shows. I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the Johnny Carson's son dying. How did that affect him? Do you think he changed as a person after that? I mean,
No,
I think anybody
no,
would on
no.
some level, but
Look, his kid was troubled for a long time. He had an alcohol problem. He was in the Navy, and he had problems in the Navy as a young kid that I got involved with very early on in representing Johnny. And he worked for our company, and he was ultimately fired because he could never get over the alcohol issues.
so he had to fire his son.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was
hard
quite
to
a, you know, you could imagine, you know, firing the boss's son is not easy.
Right.
And it was a very difficult moment with the guy who was running Carson Productions, a guy by the name of Ed Weinberger, another comedic writing genius.
I've heard that name from Taxi and
Taxi.
Yeah, right.
He did the Cosby Show. He created
Brilliant guy.
Yeah, quite a guy. And he was running our business, and he fired Johnny's son, and it was up to me to let Johnny know that Ed had fired his son.
And how did he react?
Not a happy moment.
Well, I was going to say,
Not a
so
happy moment.
how did that? I mean, obviously, if Carson really wanted to, he could have saved the kid's job on some level. But
Well, no. I think this was Weinberger was going to leave. We had a show in production, and he was the stage manager.
okay,
The son was the stage manager. It just wasn't cutting. It wasn't working.
Interesting.
So it was either Weinberger or the kid, and you know, common sense that the kid had to go.
we got to take a break. We'll come back. You can stick around, hopefully.
Sure,
But yeah,
sure.
the real interesting stuff. When we come back, we'll talk more about the book Johnny Carson that's out now with its author Henry Bushkin. Back after these words.
The Artie Lange Show, weeknights on Audience, only on DirecTV.